Railroads, ports, warehouses, highways, vessels, all of these are examples of infrastructure that enable our global ag economy. But with digital agriculture, the lack of digital infrastructure could be what's holding the industry back.
When you think about all the challenges in the industry with every crop in every region around the world, everything that needs to be solved, nobody is going to develop that on their own.
That's Claudia Roessler at Microsoft, who has launched their Azure Data Manager for agriculture. Now, this isn't just another app to try to sell to farmers. Instead, they offer the platform to companies to build applications on top of, which has people like Bayer's Mark Pendergrast excited.
Success for me would be downstream users of ag data and insights adopting ADMA as the default platform for them to build their innovation on top of. So enabling key use cases like measuring carbon footprint, managing their supply chain, and let's not forget, helping companies bring innovations to market to farmers.
Will this collaboration between Microsoft, Bayer Cropscience, and others help us to finally solve some of these ag data problems and unlock the next level of digital agriculture on today's Future of Agriculture podcast? Well, hello, fellow ag nerd. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of the Future of Agriculture. My name is Tim Hamrich, and every week you and I get to hear from the founders, farmers, innovators, and investors, the people shaping the future of the ag industry. Now, right before we dive into today's episode with Claudia Roessler and Mark Pendergrast, I want to take just a moment to recognize our quarterly presenting sponsor, which this quarter is Headstorm, engineering growth for the farms of tomorrow. Headstorm is a full-service technology consultancy with been there, done that knowledge and expertise in the ag industry. The team at Headstorm knows which digital strategies work and which ones don't work based on the competitive landscape across broadacre, specialty, and animal ag industries. Headstorm provides a holistic and actionable technology roadmap that bridges the gap between strategy and implementation. So from inception to execution, they'll help you play to your strengths, mitigate your weaknesses, and make technology your unfair advantage. You're going to hear more about that actually in practice in today's episode, but you can learn more at headstorm.com. That's headstorm.com. I'll leave a link for it in the show notes. Thank you very much to Headstorm for supporting ag innovation and the Future of Agriculture podcast. All right, now back to today's featured conversations with Claudia Roessler and Mark Pendergrast. A quick heads up on just a couple things before we dive in. First, both of these interviews were recorded at the World Agri-Tech in San Francisco. Just like other episodes that I recorded there, you'll notice that I wasn't alone in the room. I wasn't the only one having conversations, so there will be a bit of background noise you'll just have to bear with me on in this episode. Second, similar to Amie Thesingh's episode last month, I originally recorded these interviews to be spotlight episodes that I could feature the work that Headstorm does. They help me facilitate the connections with both Claudia and Mark. But just like in Amy's case, I thought the story definitely warranted a full-length episode. So we're going to focus today on the work Microsoft and Bayer are doing together, but also we will include the integral role that Headstorm has been playing in all of this as well. Just a heads up on that. You heard from both Claudia and Mark as part of our Generative AI episode, which was number 409. But the focus today is going to be on this initiative started by Microsoft with their Azure Data Manager for Agriculture, or ADMA. Again, that's Azure Data Manager for Agriculture. We'll also explore the collaboration with Bayer Cropscience, in particular, their ag-powered services platform that brings together agronomic data for a variety of applications. Now, because I know a lot of this data stuff can get a little bit abstract, I think it's probably helpful if we just level set here with some of the basics of what's going on and some basic terms. Anyway, starting with cloud services. So I think most of us intuitively know what a massive leap forward cloud computing has been for technology in general. I mean, from software applications to file storage to other sources of data. Obviously, cloud computing is how we are able to power digitization in a lot of cases. The cloud obviously is not new, but what has become clear is that just giving people access to the cloud to store data isn't enough to really tap into the power of all this information. It's just a place for storage, a place to put it. Moving from stored data to actionable data to real decisions, to real insights, to real outcomes is a very, very heavy lift, especially in an industry like agriculture that's, I'll just say messy. And I mean that in the most positive sense possible. There's just a lot of complexity and a lot of inconsistency in the way data is handled in agriculture. And I think we see that in terms of the limited impact of a lot of the digital applications that have come out. So Microsoft started creating industry-specific data management platforms. They describe this as, quote, industry-specific data connectors and capabilities to connect farm data from disparate sources, end quote. They've been successful with similar efforts in other industries, places like retail and finance and healthcare. And last year, they unveiled this Azure Data Manager for agriculture, which is a continuation of the work they were doing with FarmBeats, which may sound familiar because you might remember it from episode 266 with Microsoft's Ranveer Chandra. So they've been laying the groundwork for this for a long time, and they come out with this Azure Data Manager for agriculture, or ADMA. So when it comes to making data more valuable, the cloud is this massive step forward. Now we've got another massive step forward with ADMA in agriculture. And we're also going to talk about what could be yet another big step forward in Bayer's ag-powered services. Bayer is providing additional data infrastructure that they first developed for themselves to use internally, and now are offering to other companies that rely on agronomic data to power their various digital applications. All right, I know we're getting jargony here, but the ultimate goal is that data no longer becomes the bottleneck to progress. If a buyer, as one example, wants to pay a farmer for certain agronomic practices, all they need is that farmer's permission to access their data through these tools. If a new program wants to reward farmers for some ecosystem service that has to do with water or carbon or anything else, the process of validating all of the hard work the farmers are already doing and have been doing for some time becomes almost seamless. Or if some sort of solution that reduces the need for fertilizer needs access to data sources like soil, weather, irrigation, or other data, they don't need to build all that stuff themselves from scratch just to make their tool work. Instead, they might be able to tap into ADMA and or Bayer powered services. And I hope that kind of gives you a sense of where all of this could lead in the future. But I think what we've learned in digital ag so far is that this won't be a winner-take-all scenario. There won't be one application to rule them all and do everything. And I know when a lot of these companies are raising money, they sort of have to paint this picture that they're going to be the end-all, be-all. But that might be one sort of silver lining to the funding situation having changed, is that maybe now there won't be all these applications trying to be the end-all, be-all, and people will collaborate with efforts like the one you're going to hear about today. Nobody wants thousands of digital tools that are redundant and repetitive and limited in their effectiveness. The only path forward that I can see is a pre-competitive layer, making collaboration and data interoperability seamless. And that, I believe, is what we're going to talk about here today. All right, I'm going to get out of the way and let our guests do the rest of the talking. You'll first hear from Claudia Roessler at Microsoft, and then later you're going to hear from Mark Pendergrast at Bayer, but I'll introduce him in a bit. Claudia is the Director of Agriculture Strategic Partnerships at Microsoft. She joined in 1992 in Munich, Germany. Her career has been focused on industry solutions and business development. Claudia is also a venture partner for Radical Growth, helping entrepreneurs and startups in food and ag, and served on the board of directors at Ag Growth International. She begins our conversation with a little bit more of the backstory on Azure Data Manager for agriculture.
Around 2015, we started an effort both on the Microsoft research side, where some of our researchers just really wanted to understand the challenges on the farm. So why is it difficult to collect data there? We had some work going on the societal side around, helping companies to run analytics on land, on farms. And then on the commercial side, I was working on the commercial side. I just saw this huge amount of new innovation and investment in digital ag solutions coming out at the time. So we wanted to understand better what the challenges are. And what we found really quickly is that the organization that built digital solutions, they all run into kind of the same challenges with data that sits in silos, that's not interoperable, and sort of this notion of spending more time in cleaning data and getting it at a stage so you can run analytics on it rather than spending the time on analytics. And that's where we thought that's something we can help with. We're really good in building platforms, and can we enable those organizations to be more effective in running analytics on farms?
Yeah. For you, it seems like you are taking on a really big challenge, personally yourself, because I don't know if there's a big team at Microsoft focused on agriculture, but you are. So how do you kind of choose how to invest your efforts and spend your time?
Yeah. I think the really cool thing, Microsoft is all about engines, and I'm with the company, I can say that for over 30 years. So I learned a little bit about that. And the good thing is we have strong teams across the world. So most of the companies we work with have a local account team. So I'm definitely not alone. If we work on projects, we bring experts from different parts of the organization. So that's one thing. And then Microsoft is just really enterprise focused on partner focused. So that's why we have so many partners here. They help us getting the message out. They help us working on the projects. And then we have the strong partnership with Bayer. We have our Microsoft research team. So we truly can look at opportunities from different perspectives and then sort of move ahead with the companies that are ready to move ahead.
And I imagine partially as a result of the thought process you just mentioned, you all came out with this Azure Data Manager for agriculture. Can you explain what that is and how it starts to help solve some of those issues?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly the point. So we launched the Azure Data Manager for agriculture. In fact, last year here at World Agri-Tech, and really the idea is to help companies to accelerate the development of digital solutions. So what we want to do with the Azure Data Manager is help them collect data that's coming from farms. So think about things like farm machinery data, data that's coming from FMIS systems, sensors, satellite, weather data. Bring it into a common data platform with a data model and organize it around a geospatial temporal grid and have it available for analytics. So there's a lot of work that's going into the harmonizing and cleaning of the data and make it data interoperable. So that's one piece. And then we integrate with standard analytics tools so companies can then build analytics on it. So that's one part, and we're very excited about all the co-pilot work that's going on right now. But then we also really want to help to build this ecosystem of solutions. So we have this partnership with Bayer as an example, where Bayer is investing in those ag-powered services. We believe that there's no need that every company needs to reinvent the wheel and build everything from scratch. So we build the data foundation, but then we also have partners that build foundational analytics and, modules that others can build on top and build end-to-end solution on top.
Yeah. And to me, it makes so much sense for a company like Microsoft to do this because obviously you've got the infrastructure, you have the cloud, but also you're not in any way competitive with these companies. It's totally different. So what are you finding to be the barriers to getting more and more companies want to plug in and get involved? Because it seems like for lack of a better term, seems like a no-brainer for me.
Yeah, I think, one part is awareness and just knowing, like you said, I didn't know Microsoft is doing that for such a long time, right? It's really getting the message out. And I think we're getting better here at the conference. We have I didn't do the last count, but I think 17 of our partners running around talking about the same thing. And I do think companies have invested in that space and sometimes maybe a little bit difficult to just sort of, instead of building things, like it's not invented here, to think about buying and partnering. And I think that's a change in a mindset that we need to get, sank in the industry and just get companies more comfortable with.
Yeah. And I might be wrong about this, but to me, the sense I get is there's more interest in working together given the current environment out there in the startup area. It seemed like we went through a period of time where there was so much money being thrown at early stage companies that that was the focus. And now maybe the dust has settled a little bit and maybe there's more people looking around and be like, okay, how can we work together so that we actually make some progress? And I don't know, are you sensing that at all?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think this conference is a testament to that, right? I mean, every person that's walking around here, when you walk the grounds, like there are people talking to one another, right? So I hope this is not the exception. That's the rule that we're seeing out there in the market right now. But in reality, I think the startups also heard the writing on the wall and sort of what investors are telling them. It's like, don't try to, do everything on your own. It's about partnerships. It's companies. There's organizations that can give you reach. There's other organizations that give you the tech tools to innovate faster. And when you think about everything that's coming with generative AI and how fast those innovation cycles are going, if you try to build everything on your own, it's going to be, a race. So it's really a race out there. And I think it's just inevitable that you work together and build partnerships.
Absolutely. Well, talk about this partnership with Bayer. Now, I know you had an announcement recently, but this isn't the beginning of the relationship between Microsoft and Bayer. Can you give us some of the background on that?
Yeah, we've been, I think we share this mission of this industry coming together and becoming more collaborative and really, sharing some of the wonderful work that Bayer has been doing for the last 10, 15 years, right? I mean, their experience in building out FieldView, their experience in their research and breeding team, they have such a deep subject matter expertise in agronomy and data science that it's really rare in the industry. So when we look across the board, there's like companies that don't even want to invest like as deep in data science and building out their own model. So the opportunity we see with Bayer's in multiple ways. So they bring a lot of sort of their knowledge and their expertise in helping us building out the platform. And so do other customers, right? So we really learn from the companies we work with and understanding their challenges and their analytics use cases and, build out everything we build around the data model is really influenced from what we hear from our partners. But then Bayer also made this decision to take some of what they developed over the course of the years and make it available as those ag-powered services. I think it's revolutionized thinking from Bayer that I hope more companies are going the same route, because basically they say, well, we developed and trained and is proven and is successful. We make it available to other companies to take it in and innovate on top of it. And then we have partners that are all here at the conference that take those and build like applications that are farmer facing or that are facing the sales team, the agronomist. So we do the bottom layer with data. Bayer can bring in models, and then those partners really make it an end-to-end solution.
Right. And maybe cast a more holistic vision of what this could be, assuming that you could get industry-wide participation in something like that. How does the ag tech ecosystem look different as a result?
Yeah. So first of all, I think the ecosystem itself is really growing, right? And that's great, because I think 5-10 years ago, people would think farmers will happily pay for digital advice, right? And I think everybody in the industry understands, no, this is not going to happen. So thankfully, we see companies coming to the table, insurance and banks that want to provide better financial services and advice to growers. We see brands care about transparency, but also sustainable farming and helping farmers to apply more sustainable practices. We see, obviously, the seed companies and input companies thinking about providing more outcome-based services. And we definitely see OEMs thinking more about intelligent equipment. So there's more what we call aggregators in the industry that have the power to bring analytics to growers. And again, here we see this ecosystem of solutions, because when you think about all the challenges in the industry with every crop and every region around the world, everything that needs to be solved, nobody is going to develop that on their own. And we really want to bring those companies together that have the subject matter expertise with the ones that have the reach, that want to enable and have the funding, to be honest, to help farmers. I've been thinking about it. There's something to learn about circular economy, right? Where we share and reuse and recycle. I think that's how I see innovation going in the industry. So maybe I can coin like the circular innovation in agriculture for the future, right? But I think that's sort of my vision where I hope that this is going.
I love it. That is awesome. Yeah, I really appreciate that. And I think it can be difficult sometimes for us to kind of grasp a lot of the data challenges, right? We see them how they show up, but we don't really, it's a complex issue that it's going to require a sort of holistic type solution. So anyway, it's cool to see your efforts and companies like Bayer coming along, on board as well. Where does Headstorm fit into this? I know you've worked with the folks at Headstorm before. Can you talk about those experiences and what exactly they helped with?
Yeah. Well, what I really love about Headstorm is so they bring this combination, which is really rare in the industry, to be tech savvy. So really understand, what's here and now and what's going to be relevant in the near future. But they also have the strategy mindset and they understand the industry. And I think that's really super powerful. And for example, the Ag Pilot project we've been working on, they announced it here at World Agri-Tech, is such a great example because a lot of people think, Gen AI, that's the next chatbot. And, you start just asking questions. And to be honest, I think if this is your vision, it's going to be like a dashboard, because if you don't ask questions, there's really not a lot of value that's coming out of that. But they went and thought through, what is an agronomist doing on a day-to-day basis? How can we make those agronomists more productive? And I really went and sort of looked at the different systems they're using, from ERP, CRM, and what's going on in the farm. And with the Azure Data Manager, we can help bringing this data that's real-time data, real-world data into that. So for example, they take a weather alert to inform growers that there might be a risk to their crops. They can check at the same time how's the inventory level. And then based on that, the co-pilot helps them to draft a message the agronomist can send to the grower. So it's like an end-to-end process, and that's really helping with productivity. And I think they were really excellent in thinking this through, and they have so many more ideas how this can grow in other areas and, make different people in this ecosystem more productive. And that's what I like. And they help us bringing those solutions alive and work with the companies on their specific challenges.
Well, that is a perfect note to bring in our next guest you're going to hear from on today's episode, which is Mark Pendergrast. Mark is the Director of Business Development for the Data and Cloud team at Bayer Cropscience, specifically the Digital Farming Solutions Group, or DFS, within Bayer. His role in particular is helping to build partnerships throughout the industry and evangelism for the work they're doing with Microsoft, productizing and bringing to market the Azure Data Manager for ag and ag-powered services. He says this work is critical to the mission of his group within Bayer. So the natural question there is where we kick off today's conversation with Mark, when I asked him why this is such a critical mission from Bayer's perspective.
Bayer, specifically our Digital Farming Solutions Group, is probably best known for the Climate Field View product, which is our farmer-facing app, market-leading agronomic tool for farmers across the globe, 22 plus countries, many hundreds of thousands of acres under management, et cetera. The overall genesis of this collaboration with Microsoft came out of a realization by our management that much of the development that we were doing for Climate Field View and other internal projects within Bayer often was repetitive and sometimes even duplicative. And the idea was, wouldn't it be more cost efficient, resource efficient to have a way to manage our IT deployments in a centralized fashion and leverage the best available tools in the cloud to be able to do that? And so it originally was an internal, focused effort that quickly expanded to, hey, this could actually have market potential outside of Bayer's four walls, that the whole ecosystem, this broad food value chain, farm to fork ecosystem could also benefit from. So it's been an evolution of strategy. And our group is exclusively focused on B2B digital enablement scenarios. So it's a complement to Climate Field View, which remains farmer-facing. Ours is exclusively B2B facing. So in a sense, Climate Field View is an internal customer of ours, right? Like I mentioned and hinted at, the original intention being helping serve Bayer's digital tools. But my role specifically is more externally focused, looking at B2B companies and seeing them as potential customers and partners to help them more quickly and resource efficiently innovate in the digital world.
Right. And is the end result of these efforts the ability to have something like an operating system like we would on our phone or computer, where it's just easy to have the programs we like to use the way we like to use them right there?
Yeah, I like to use analogies in terms of what we're doing. And I think one that seems to work quite well when we talk to partners and customers is the idea of building a house, right? What we're doing right here with Azure Data Manager for Ag and Ag-powered services effectively is building the plumbing infrastructure behind the scenes, if you will, the critical digital infrastructure that enables innovation. And so we're not in the business necessarily of managing the water flow per se, right? The data ultimately comes from farmers with farmer consent, but the plumbing infrastructure is super important. Where the pipes go, how it's all connected, how it all flows is really, really important. So our job together with Microsoft is in building that plumbing infrastructure. You could call it an operating system as well, if you want. Ag-powered services, which are Bayer's value add to this equation, are effectively apps, but without a front end, if you will. These are API backend capabilities that are packaged together for external companies and internal, Bayer apps as well to use as complements and as additions to their value add. So you could think of them as apps that run on top of the operating system that is ADMA in a long stretch of that analogy.
Yeah. And so, you actually have the behind the scenes so that something as simple as, to use the analogy, an operating system could exist.
Yep, exactly. But it's not an operating system in a sense. In the cloud, there isn't a concept of an operating system, right? The cloud is, public cloud infrastructure like Azure, right? And the apps run on top of that public infrastructure.
Mm-hmm. And so the mission here then is to build the pipes and then to encourage people to start building on top of this infrastructure.
You got it. And the key value prop that I always like to lead is a one-stop shop for all the agronomic insight that a B2B company might need. Whether you're a consumer packaged goods company, a bank, an insurance, anyone that's in that food value chain can see benefit coming to one place for all their key agronomic data and insights. So, that's really what's motivated us to start with the farm, because that is what Bayer knows best, right? So building on the experience of Climate Field View, where we already have access to hundreds of thousands of acres, that core operational data was the start for our focus for pulling that data in. We've since expanded it with the idea of becoming a comprehensive source of agronomic information. So we've since then announced what we call data connectors to other OEMs as well, CNHI, John Deere. We also have started working on connectors from Ag Leader, Stara, Trimble, Topcon, and many others. And just at this World Agri-Tech show, we announced that we're also expanding beyond traditional combines and equipment into irrigation as well. So we announced the intention of bringing in a connector to Lindsay irrigation data. So we hope that's the start of expanding beyond just traditional farm equipment into irrigation age scenarios. So this one-stop shop value proposition is a key part of how we engage the conversations with these downstream users of agronomic data. But aggregating data is just half the battle, right? As anyone in the ag space already knows, once you get data in one place into a big data lake, that's not enough. What you need to do is make that data interoperable. And this is where we leverage the talent and experience of Microsoft that has lots of experience doing similar kind of data aggregation efforts in other industries. So they've already done industry clouds, if you will, in retail and finance and healthcare, other very sensitive high regulatory environments. They're bringing that same experience here into ag and helping us build a common data model, if you will, to make that data translated, normalized, and most importantly, interoperable so that you can then run sophisticated analytics on top of that, right? And that's really where the value is. It's not just pulling it all together in one place. It's being able to drive insights from that normalized data sets that then can drive really interesting use cases downstream.
Yep. And does that require anyone who participates to adhere to certain data standards?
Yeah, I'd say a good question. We're not trying to create a new data standard, right? That's the beauty of this Microsoft promoted model is so we're trying to be extensible. We're trying to meet where the data is. So I don't claim to be a technical expert and be able to provide you the exact intricate details of how that works. But the intention from a business and use case perspective is to make that data fully translated and interoperable that becomes analytics ready, if you will, right? That's the core goal and the whole mission of what ADMA is doing. And we also realize that we can't do it all ourselves, right? So Microsoft and Bayer have a great foundation. We're bringing the agronomic insights into that, but we're also relying on third parties to help us with this. That's why at the recent Agritechnica show in November, we announced a partnership with Leaf, also a big player in the industry. They're going to be helping us create translation services to take OEM data and translate it into a much more usable format, one step closer to making that interoperable. So this truly is an ecosystem play. We know we can't do it all ourselves. We're turning to the best and brightest of the ecosystem to help us complement that. And that's what makes it really exciting, right? Is seeing people work hand in hand together to achieve a common goal.
Well, not just people, but, industry leaders. I think, we've been having this conversation for a long time, and it seems like, what needed to happen is industry leaders saying, okay, here, we're taking the first several steps to making this happen. What was the catalyst for Bayer wanting to step up and say, okay, we want to be a part of this?
Yeah, I'd say besides the internal motivations I talked to earlier, so we saw this also as a way to help us reduce duplication and be more efficient with our IT resources.
Sure, but more like why now?
Why now? Guess what? Technology is here, right? That is the key inflection point. Cloud technology is at a point where it's a lot more effective and capable of interoperating and arriving at common data models. You could not have done this 5 to 10 years ago. The maturity of the public data cloud providers wasn't there yet. Microsoft hadn't built up the experience in other industries that could be translated over here to the agronomic space. Bayer's motivation wasn't there yet. We also are very interested in building a business. So this is also a reflection from a strategic perspective that Bayer is increasingly putting emphasis on digital efforts as well. So that motivation, in the last couple of years is relatively new. So it's a combination of business interest, technology, readiness, internal motivations to reduce resource inefficiencies. And I would say also willingness by partners to work with us, right? This idea of doing this in the ecosystem way, I'd say that's a relatively new phenomena in ag. Even potentially, distant competitors now wanting to work with us, talk to us in Microsoft, that too is a relatively new thing. Those combination of factors is why this is possible now versus, say, 3, 4, 5 years ago, where you just didn't have those key things happening.
Sure. And if I have an ag tech startup and I want to be involved, because I think this is where the future is going, what is required of me to be a part of this? So
there are a number of different ways an ag startup, and I'd say this is applicable not just to startups, but for broader companies too, even mature companies. This is just as relevant. There are a number of different ways to participate in the ADMA ag-powered service ecosystem. At a very high level, you can be a data contributor. So you can contribute insights, data sets to the value stream. A good case and example is startups that have built interesting IoT sensors, right? That can also be very valuable to CPG companies, traders, for example. Those data sets and insights that are riding on top of that are examples of data and insight providers. Another, of course, example is you could be a data consumer or insight consumer. So you could say, instead of me trying to create my own data lake, for example, I'll adopt ADMA as my base of platform and use the insights to come prepackaged, if you will, as the basis for my app or for my service that I'm building for my customers downstream. So obviously that is what motivates Bayer and Microsoft, is seeing more consumers of this overall platform. That's a key part of how we want to operate. And I'd say a third sort of mode of participation in the ecosystem is also being a solution provider. Bayer and Microsoft can't necessarily do it all ourselves, right? This is also an ecosystem example where we see companies coming to the market with interesting technology, expertise in a particular customer segment or a particular use case, for example, and wanting to build on top of ADMA to create an end-to-end solution. Say it's a sustainability platform or a trading platform, for example. They could basically create a solution and as an ISV, independent software vendor, that then becomes a key part of how they go to market themselves. So, some people call them system integrators, ISVs. It's that concept of building an actual solution on top of the plumbing, if you will, that we mentioned earlier. So think of them as the framers, right? So to use that house analogy, right?
And so in the case of Lindsay, so they're actually becoming a data provider. Is that right?
That is what we're announcing today. They are committing to sharing their data with farmer consent. Obviously, at the crux of everything here is the farmer consent, and that goes to as much for Lindsay as it does for farm equipment makers and machinery guys, et cetera. Everything's based on the farmer giving the consent to share the data with downstream providers. But Lindsay is, in this case, agreeing to link up their publicly existing APIs with ADMA, with the intention that downstream users, like a consumer packaged goods company or a trader, could then go one place to ADMA APIs and then use all that data in their applications, in their use cases.
And for the farmer listening, what does that look like, the farmer permission piece? Is that just signing off on one of those really long sort of data agreements when you sign on to it? Or is it more like, to use the plumbing analogy, you have your own individual valve and you could turn it on and off as you want?
That is indeed the vision, right? That automated valve, really seamless valve of saying who I can share my data with. That's the key vision.
And when and for what purpose?
And for what purpose? That is what we are going to respect in ADMA. All of that permissions metadata, if you will, flows through ADMA. I'm most familiar with the climate field view use case, for example, and that's where the farmer has the ability to agree to share data with their bank, for example, or their irrigation provider, or their agronomist. All of that permission setting done inside of field view then gets carried through ADMA, and then we respect that and enable that data to flow into those use cases as needed. But it all starts at the very core with the farmer granting permission to wherever data.
Makes a lot of sense. Well, one of the things we're doing here is talking about Headstorm and hearing kind of how they fit into projects. And so in your case, where does Headstorm fit in and what have been your experiences there with them?
Yeah, Headstorm was clearly on our target list as a key partner in this ecosystem. Really falls into that third category of contributors, right? So they're acting as a system integrator, ISV, if you will, in this ecosystem. So they came to us with a number of key advantages. One, prior experience working with Microsoft on Microsoft tech stack. So they already had lots of knowledge of the Azure ecosystem. Another key advantage that they bring to the table is that they have ag experience, right? It's not a large ISV or SI that you have to reteach them everything on ag. They come to the table with existing ag customers and knowledge of this use case. And third, they have a very strong willingness to collaborate and partner with us. They're willing to invest in the ag space together with us in approaching customers. So those three key pillars, if you will, of their value prop are one of the reasons why both Microsoft and Bayer have them in our close-knit circle of system integrators that we can go to market with.
Very cool. And talk about this project as far as you mentioned Lindsay, obviously announcement today. Where are things today and where do you project it being in the next, giving you ample time? I don't know what ample time is, 5 years or so.
Yeah. Well, we're at a really exciting point here because, as you may have heard from Microsoft, we're in a preview time period for the Azure Data Manager for Ag. So it's a great opportunity for us to work and get early feedback from Lighthouse customers. So for all those customers out there seeing the initial value prop of what ADMA could do, this is our chance to work with them very closely to get their feedback on their use cases, on their expectations for the common data model, for how we structure the business models, for example, because all of this is still being worked on, right? as you'd expect during a beta or preview phase. But we're very excited to get to that next step and bring this to market commercially as a true offering for customers to build production-ready solutions on top of. Where I'd like to see this in the next 2 to 3 years is this becoming a valuable, well-entrenched solution for the whole ecosystem. Success for me would be downstream users of ag data and insights adopting ADMA as the default platform for them to build their innovation on top of. So enabling key use cases like measuring carbon footprint, tracking EUDR or deforestation regulation compliance, managing their supply chain so that ag products can get from farm to factory to consumer in a much more efficient way. And let's not forget, helping companies bring innovations to market to farmers in a quicker, more scalable and cost-effective way. That would be success for me. Seeing companies build on top of what we have here and creating the most beautiful house in the neighborhood. That is success.
Yeah, I'm excited for that. And I'm really, really interested in what you're doing. And hopefully someday I can be one of those people building a house on the plumbing here.
Can't wait. Yeah, you'll be one of our go-to GCs.
There we go. No, thank you, Mark, very much. Anything else you'd like to either add or emphasize?
Yeah, I just want to say, again, emphasize the fact that our ADMA platform is an open ecosystem approach for those companies, small or large, that want to get more involved in any of the roles that I described earlier. Please reach out. Yeah, we've got a great website, agpoweredservices.com. Great starting point, or reach out to the Bayer Data and Cloud team as well.
All right, well, that is going to do it for today's episode. Thank you so much to Claudia Roessler and Mark Pendergrast for taking the time during that busy week in San Francisco for these interviews. I know in Mark's case, him and I had to wait till the entire event was over, and luckily they kept the room open for us so that we could have the interview because he was so booked during that week. But really, really interesting stuff. I am a believer in this concept for sure, that we do need something that is sort of this pre-competitive data platform that allows and enables so much innovation to happen on top of it, because building a company is hard enough, or growing a company or maintaining a company, those are hard things. And so I think getting some of this tech infrastructure in place will help everyone in our industry keep focused on what matters, which is the customer, and bringing them actual value rather than having to recreate the wheel, so to speak. Anyway, obviously I will link in the show notes where you can learn more about ADMA as well as Ag Powered Services. Thank you so much again to Mark and Claudia. Thanks as well to Headstorm for making both of these interviews happen and for being our quarterly presenting sponsor this quarter. Last but never least, thank you for your time and your attention. I do not take it lightly. I'll be back next week with another story of ag innovation.